Hello, welcome to chapter 4. In this chapter, we're going to look at consciousness. We may think of consciousness as one sort of discrete thing where we are aware, the things that we are aware of are the things that we're conscious of, but there are many different aspects of consciousness. We can alter our consciousness either naturally or through various substances that we may take, both legally and illegally. And we sometimes can alter our conscious through conscious effort of things like meditation, where we try to gain a sense of calm and peace. All of these issues are things that we're going to talk about in this particular chapter, but we need to start at the beginning. And so in this chapter, this module A, we're going to look at what is consciousness, what are some of the effects of being conscious, fully conscious, and not being as conscious as we could be. We'll talk about our circadian rhythms, which is sometimes referred to as a biological clock. It's that ability that our body has to control our sleepfulness, wakefulness, hunger, thirst, etc., body temperature. So we're going to talk about that, and we're going to talk about what happens when our circadian rhythms are disrupted through things like jet lag, working overtime, and those sort of things. Okay, so let's begin with defining consciousness. Your textbook just defines consciousness as everything of which we are aware of at any given time, such as thoughts, feelings, mental processes, the kinds of things we are doing to process information that we are encountering, and the events outside of ourselves. But is that a complete definition? Are we always that fully conscious and fully aware of everything that's going on? Let me present an idea to you. Consider that you go to school every day, you go to your classes, you have a routine that you have to follow. You know what time you have to get up in the morning, what time you have to be there. If you drive, I know that many of you probably take the bus, or some of you may even walk, but let's focus on the driving aspect at this point. So you drive to the same place every day, whether it's work or school. You get into that habit, that routine. Are you always consciously aware of every turn by turn you make? For instance, if somebody asked you, how did you get to the college? You might say, oh, I took the link, or oh, I took this. But in terms of all the turns or the different times you turn and the things that you saw on your way, you probably weren't aware of them. You probably aren't, because they're so ingrained in your consciousness. And in fact, sometimes we call this automatic pilot, because what happens sometimes, and I'm sure this has happened to everybody at some point or another, where you get up, get dressed, have your shower, get dressed, get ready to go out the door, and you're thinking you've got to go to work, let's say. So you get in the car and you start to turn out of your driveway the way you would to get to your workplace. And then you realize, no, this is Saturday. I'm actually not working today. I'm doing something else that has to be done. And so you've gone halfway to your work destination, or maybe not halfway, but partially there, and realize that you've taken the wrong turn for the real destination which you have, which might be visiting your family members or friends or what have you. This is automatic pilot because we're not fully consciously aware of why we do this. The other consciousness that we're not fully aware of course, is if you were in a either medically induced coma or a coma as a result of a accident or trauma of some sort. And it's interesting that people who awake from a coma will tell you that they had all kinds of things happening to them. They may or may not have a basis in reality. I think I mentioned before that my brother had a serious motor vehicle accident, and when he came out of his coma, he started asking about things like the Super Bowl, who won it. He started asking things like how was my Uncle John's dog? Is somebody taking care of it? Now, all of these things would be fine and dandy, but it was April, I think, when he asked about the Super Bowl question. And my Uncle John lives in Michigan, so he wouldn't be worrying about or having anything to do with my Uncle John's dog. He went there for a while, but I guess while in his coma state, he thought he was living with them, I guess. Anyway, let's talk about other aspects of consciousness that are important. And the first most important one, of course, is the circadian rhythm. What is the circadian rhythm? The circadian rhythm is those daily fluctuations that we feel in things like our appetite, our energy levels, our alertness, our sleepiness, whether we have to go to the washroom, the temperature. And it really depends on each individual. For instance, a person who is at their most awake in the morning, their body temperature is going to be highest when they get up. If you are more awake in the evening, that's when your body temperature is at the highest. So those of you who have difficulty going to sleep sometimes may find that part of the reason for that is that your body temperature should be at its lowest point. And we're not talking about major fluctuations. We're not talking about those fluctuations when we have a fever. Just, half a point or even a full point below your normal temperature, not major fluctuations. Also, our heart rate and blood pressure are activated through our circadian rhythms. So what happens? What are the circadian rhythms then? How do they work? Like I said before, some of you may know it as this biological clock. It's sort of like, my biological clock is telling me it's time to go to bed. We may not say it that way, but we may be thinking that it's time to, you're feeling tired, it's your lowest energy period of the day, and what have you. What's controlling this is a small part of your brain within the hypothalamus. And so we're talking about a small piece of brain tissue that's probably the size of a pinhead. Really, really, really tiny. Nothing major, but it's got a big name, suprachiasmatic nucleus. And this is within your hypothalamus, because as you know, when we talked about the brain in the last chapter, the hypothalamus controls things like our breathing, our hunger, our sleep wakefulness. It controls how our body responds to those fluctuations during the day. And so the suprachiasmatic nucleus sets this in motion to the hypothalamus, which then is sent to our body to do something to our brain and our body to make a decision as to whether we should go to bed because you're feeling tired, or whether we should have something to eat because you're hungry. And this is set basically by the routines that we follow on a regular basis. So for instance, you go to bed roughly the same time, or you try to. You have meals at roughly the same time every day, or at least you try to. And the more we do that, the more routine we are at having our meals and bedtime and drinks and so forth, the more likely our biological clock tells us, before we even look at the actual clock, that says, oh, it's lunchtime, or oh, it's supper time, or whatever the case may be. So what happens if those routines are changed? Has anybody ever flown internationally? What are some of the problems that you had as a result of flying? So for instance, let's say you had to take a plane to Madrid. You'd be crossing several time zones, and you would feel this tiredness when you arrive there. And it's not just the fact that you've passed through these different time zones. It has to do with your biological clock and how it has to be reset to this new time zone. So for instance, you may feel tired, you may feel hunger, you may feel disoriented. All of this is because the suprachiasmatic nucleus is affected by the levels of light. So if your body is telling you that it's only, I don't know, 3 o'clock in the morning, but you're actually in Europe where it's 6 hours, 9 o'clock in the morning, and everybody's getting on with their day, then you're looking at this bright light, and it's trying to tell you that you should be getting ready to move around, but your body is thinking of the darkness that you would normally be experiencing had you not done this change. And so, what about shift workers? Shift workers have different issues because it's more of an ongoing thing. With jet lag, you usually can get over it within a couple of days, and then of course you'll get back. When you come back, you may find that you have that jet lag as well, depending on how long you're away and depending on how much your body has acclimatized to the new change, the new living situation where your daytime and nighttime are different times. But shift workers have this issue on an ongoing basis. They work 3 days of night shift and then take 3 days off, and then they work 3 days of day shifts and then take 3 days off, and so forth. Or they make 3, 4, whatever the case may be. But the problem is your body doesn't have time to readjust in that particular time. And so there's been several studies looking at some of the issues faced by people who work shifts. One in particular that I want to talk about is Vogel et al. In 2012. And what they found was that people who had worked shifts had more gastrointestinal problems, more heart problems. They often had marital problems, stress problems, family problems, all as a result of working shifts. Why is that? Well, because your body is saying that I should be sleeping. It's nighttime. But you're wide awake trying to be productive at your job place. So you have this sense of what we call subjective night, where your body is at its lowest temperature, but you're not allowed to go to sleep because you have to work. And so your sense of just subjective night is all scattered as a result of the shift work. So what can we do about this? What can we do to minimize the negative effects of shift work? Well, some studies have shown that light exposure is an important factor. Having light blocking glasses, minimizing health-related stress, trying to eat at regular times, even if you have difficulties due to your shifts. So it appears that these kinds of things can help those shift workers maintain a sense of balance and minimize some of the negative factors that relate to working shifts. Because you think about it too, is when you come home, you have to find out blackout curtains or what have you so that you can actually get some sleep if you've worked a night shift. Okay, so that's the circadian rhythms. And sort of, it's a nice segue into sleep. Sleep is one of those mysterious parts of our lives that we're not conscious of what's happening. We all dream, for instance, but we don't remember our dreams. Or sometimes we remember some dreams, but we don't remember all the dreams that we have. And the fact of the matter is that we do dream every night, but we'll talk more about that in the next module. And we'll also talk about other major sleep problems that some people have experienced.